If what we're seeing so far holds up, the 2026 Mazda CX-50 could be the version that finally gets everything right. Mazda didn't just fine-tune. It straight up addressed the biggest complaints owners had from day one. Hello everyone, this is Scott from CarlandTV. It's time to hop in the front seat because today, I'm breaking down how this next-gen CX-50 might just shut the critics up and finally earn that top-tier spot in the compact SUV lineup. Before I start, I would really appreciate it if you would push those buttons below, the subscribe button, the notification bell, all of them. This is not necessary, but those little clicks help a brother out. Plus, it pushes me to give you more valuable car-related content on your screen. Now, buckle up, and let's get back to the video. When I first sat in the original CX-50, the interior felt like a near miss, like someone took premium design cues and handed them to a stubborn interface team. Everything looked nice, but then you realized you were stuck using a rotary dial to type in an address like it was 2012. No touchscreen unless you were parked? Yeah, that got old fast. But from everything Mazda's showing us for 2026, they've finally caved to logic. And I mean that in the best way. Word is, Mazda's upgraded the screen layout and functionality across more trims, not just the high-end ones. Touchscreen input is now supported when the car's stopped or moving at low speeds, which makes a difference when you're trying to switch playlists or pull up a destination mid-errand. The rotary controller's still there, but now it works in tandem with the touchscreen instead of fighting against it. What I'm most curious about is whether Mazda improved the voice controls and response times, because that lag was brutal in earlier models. With wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto now standard, you can dodge the native UI if needed, but from the sounds of it, you might not have to anymore. As someone who spends hours behind the wheel, stuff like this matters. You want your focus on the road, not buried in menu screens. It looks like Mazda finally got the message. Let's talk about the drivetrain next, because the hybrid update is where this gets real interesting. I've always respected Mazda for making cars that drive better than they have any business doing. Even when they're chasing Toyota-level reliability, they still somehow sneak in that grin-worthy handling. But fuel economy? That's where the CX-50 got side-eyed. The standard 2.5-liter gas engine wasn't exactly sipping fuel, and the turbo model could hit your wallet hard if you drove it like it begged to be driven. Owners noticed, and Mazda did too. So for 2025, Mazda brought in Toyota's hybrid system, and it's rolling into 2026 with momentum. Now, before you write it off as a badge swap, listen, this isn't a Prius in a hiking jacket. Mazda tuned the hybrid setup with its own 2.5-liter four-cylinder, pairing it with Toyota's proven electrics. What you get is a smooth, efficient drivetrain that actually feels natural in a Mazda. No rubbery CVT weirdness, no sluggish throttle. It's not going to win a stoplight race, but you'll hit around 37 to 39 mpg combined, and that's a serious upgrade for folks who drive this SUV daily. What sells me even more is that this hybrid isn't exclusive to some ultra-premium trim. It's available in real-world versions people actually buy. And because the CX-50 is built stateside at Mazda's Alabama plant, parts and servicing are going to be easier to deal with down the line. Mazda didn't just slap on an eco badge and call it innovation. They made something usable, fuel-efficient, and still pleasant to drive, exactly what a compact SUV hybrid should be. Now, you can't just sell rugged looks and call it a utility vehicle. You've got to back it up with real-world space and comfort. And with the early CX-50s, that's where things got a little sketchy. From the outside, it looked like a longer, wider evolution of the CX-5. But slide into the rear seat, and you'd hit a wall, literally, with your knees. The sloping roof and tighter legroom just didn't match what folks expected from a so-called adventure SUV. Owners with growing kids or gear-heavy weekends didn't hold back in feedback. Mazda must have taken that seriously, because the 2026 update seems to have course-corrected. We're seeing a reshaped rear bench with more relaxed seat angles and slightly improved legroom. The hip point's also been lowered a bit, which gives rear passengers a more natural seating position. It's a subtle change, but when you've spent a couple of hours in the back, you feel it in your knees and back. Mazda also padded up the seat cushions, which used to feel stiff over long drives. Cargo-wise, the layout's been reworked for better usability. The opening's wider, and the floor is now flatter when the seats are folded. That alone makes loading bulky stuff like coolers or mountain bikes less of a puzzle. No more awkward lift-over lip either, and with the hybrid battery stashed low and out of the way, you're not losing any real-world storage. This might sound like small stuff, but for folks who use their SUV like a tool, and not just a commuter box, this matters. And if Mazda nailed the ride quality, too, it's going to round out the daily experience even better. If you've ever driven the early CX-50, especially the turbo trims, you probably noticed how planted it felt. but you also probably felt every crack in the road. That stiff ride gave it a sporty edge, sure, but over time it wore people down. Commuters were complaining about the harshness on rough city streets, and highway travelers noted road noise sneaking in, especially over coarse pavement. For a vehicle aiming to balance weekend trails with weekday errands, that kind of compromise just didn't hold up. Now with the 2026 CX-50, Mazda seems to have gone back to the suspension playbook. They didn't neuter it, they refined it. Word is they returned the dampers and softened the rebound rates slightly, especially on the non-turbo and hybrid trims. It still holds a line through a turn like a Mazda should, but now you're not bracing for every expansion joint on the freeway. There's also more underbody insulation and better acoustic glass, which cuts down on wind and tire noise. It's not Lexus quiet, but it's no longer loud enough to drown out your podcasts either. I've said this before with rifles, and I'll say it about cars. Balance is the hardest thing to nail. Ride quality without going sloppy. Firm suspension without punishing the driver. Mazda finally seems to have found that middle ground. And if you're someone who commutes Monday to Friday but still wants to hit a gravel trail on the weekend, this new CX-50 might finally deliver both without compromise. Now that we've felt how it drives, let's look at whether Mazda finally sorted the trim strategy. Because one of the biggest complaints was that you had to overpay just to get the good stuff. Let me tell you, nothing grinds my gears like when an automaker hides all the useful features behind a bloated top trim price tag. That was the case with the early CX-50 lineup. If you wanted ventilated seats, a panoramic moonroof, or even the upgraded infotainment system, you had to jump straight into the Turbo Premium Plus trim. And by then, you were nudging into the low $40K range, which is dangerously close to luxury brand territory, but without the badge or the warranty coverage to match. This time around, Mazda's making smarter plays. For 2026, the word is they're offering key features like the 10.25-inch infotainment screen, heated and ventilated front seats, and the panoramic roof much earlier in the trim walk. The non-turbo Premium and Premium Plus trims are now getting better interior appointments and more tech without forcing you into the turbocharged engine. That opens up more choices for buyers who care about comfort and convenience, but don't necessarily need 320 pound-feet of torque. All trims still come with standard all-wheel drive, which is a huge plus compared to rivals like the CR-V or Rogue that charge extra for it. And with the hybrid now in the mix, there's even more flexibility in how you spec the car. Mazda hasn't released full 2026 pricing yet, but if they hold close to the current structure, it's starting around $31,500 and topping out at just under $44,000. It keeps the CX-50 competitive without pricing out its core buyer. So now that we've got comfort, features, and value dialed in, let's talk about the part that hasn't needed much fixing at all, the design. Mazda might have adjusted a lot under the hood and inside the cabin, but one thing they didn't screw with, and thank God for that, is the CX-50's design. Say what you want about styling being subjective, but in a parking lot full of vanilla compact crossovers, this one still turns heads. The long hood, wide stance, squared-off fenders. It's got that athletic, planted look that makes it feel a cut above. It doesn't try to look like a truck, and it sure as hell doesn't blend into traffic like a CR-V or a Rogue. For 2026, they've added a few sharp updates. Lighting elements have been reworked slightly. They got narrower DRLs, tighter rear signature, and a new blacked-out grille treatment on select trims. New paint options like Tundra Copper and Deep Rhodium give buyers a chance to spec something with a little personality. Even the wheel designs have been freshened up. The Meridian Edition still looks ready to climb something, and the new hybrid trims blend that utility aesthetic with a cleaner, slightly more city-friendly vibe. The cool part is that all of this design translates to actual function. The hood isn't just for show, it gives great forward visibility. Fender cladding helps with minor trail rash. And the lower roof height makes roof rack loading way easier than on bulkier off-roaders. You get out of this thing at a trailhead or in a downtown parking garage, and it still looks like you made the right call. Which brings me to a bigger question. If the CX-50's this dialed in, what's the plan with the CX-5? Because Mazda's keeping both. And that's no accident. Back when the CX-50 was first announced, a lot of us figured it was the CX-5's farewell tour. It looked like a replacement on paper. Bigger footprint, more rugged attitude, fresh design language. But now, heading into 2026, both models are not only still in the lineup, they're thriving. And after digging into Mazda's strategy, I get why they're keeping both. It's not redundancy, it's smart segmentation. Stefan Meisterfeld, Mazda's VP of Strategic Planning, laid it out plainly. The CX-5 is for the urban crowd who wants something polished, refined, and easier to maneuver in tight city streets. The CX-50? It's for the outdoorsy types, who lean more toward weekend trails and rougher backroads. And the sales numbers back it up. In 2024, Mazda moved over 134,000 CX-5s and more than 80,000 CX-50s, with both models sitting among the brand's top 3 sellers. Through mid-2025, that trend has continued, with both nameplates accounting for more than half of Mazda's U.S. sales. Another angle here is production. The CX-50 is built in Alabama, which is right here in the U.S., while the CX-5 is still imported from Japan. That gives Mazda a little insurance against supply chain or tariff issues, while also allowing it to market differently based on region. Globally, the CX-5 still crushes, so it makes sense not to mess with that momentum. So no, the CX-50 isn't replacing the CX-5. It's complementing it. And for buyers, that just means more ways to get into a compact SUV that fits your lifestyle. Overall, the 2026 Mazda CX-50 isn't just a visual upgrade or a mild refresh. It's a full response to what owners and critics have been asking for. Improved ride comfort, smarter tech, better fuel economy with the hybrid option, and a more balanced trim strategy make this the most well-rounded version yet. It still delivers that signature Mazda driving feel, but now it finally lives up to its rugged promise without the compromises. If you passed on the earlier models, this is the one worth revisiting. Mazda didn't just refine the CX-50, they might have finally perfected it.